In what way?
It's a little more crisp.
Crisp?
In a good way.
Like chips?
Like lettuce. Crisp like lettuce. Like a nice iceberg lettuce.
Oh. You know, these intros and exits or outros are very easy to do.
It's the only reason people watch, to be honest. I'll suffer through the psalm just so I can see the closing credits. All right, folks, welcome to Pondering Psalms. We're pondering Psalm 75 this week. I'm Curt Austin, and this is my friend
David Mullins.
David Mullins. And so together we are discussing Psalm 75 this week. If you've been following along, reading your psalm on a daily basis the way we have been doing, then you've probably thought about these 10 verses and what they've maybe said to our circumstances, maybe what that we're living in today, as well as what they're saying to our personal lives. So Dave, what'd you come away? What was, I won't say the big aha, because we learned a couple of weeks ago that's the wrong question.
The joys in the journey.
How did God speak to you through this psalm?
Well, one, I find it interesting because if we can rewind to last week, Psalm 74, that was kind of a downer.
And we talked about that in the middle of the week. We posted, if you want to go back and look at that, we kind of revisited it a little bit because the more it lived in our hearts, the more of a bummer it became.
Yes. And the question in that psalm was, how long, O Lord? You know, how long will you allow this to go on? Mm-hmm. And in this psalm, that gets answered. On how long.
They're both by Asaph.
Yes.
Right? Or Asaph, as I like to say, because I'm from Indiana.
Yeah.
And so maybe it is, and I think you had mentioned, maybe you didn't mention it in video, but maybe when we were talking offline, that sometimes they're read together, or they're considered one psalm. Is that right?
Well, I'm not sure. I couldn't get a sense of if it was ever considered one psalm, but they do play off of each other. So Psalm 74 was really kind of dark. The sanctuary had been destroyed, the city had been destroyed. They're asking, how long are you going to let these people insult you, God, and do these things? Right. And then you come to Psalm 75 and it starts out, we thank you. It's like, talking about a shift.
Yeah.
To get a little further in, I want to, kind of back up a little bit. Because I was really hit by we give thanks because you are near. And so this week that nearness was something that kept coming up in my time. We thank you because you are near. Because sometimes
unpack that more. What's that mean?
Well, sometimes we kind of feel isolated. We feel like we're all alone. And I would think that's how they felt, whenever Psalm 74 was written. Where are you, God? How can these things happen? But yet in 75, it's like, we thank you and we give thanks because you are near. And everyone tells of your wonderful deeds, even though, if you look at Psalm 74, the temple is all destroyed.
And it goes back to what we've talked about the last couple of weeks about the orientation, the disorientation, and the new orientation. And it's as if he's gone through that disorientation, and now he's looking at this from a new orientation. Yeah. God, you're right there.
Now the thing I don't know is when either one of these psalms were written. It might have been years apart. 75 could have been written before 74. But when they put together the psalms, they decided to put these two next to each other, and I think that's a statement that was being made.
Sure.
Like I said, 74 asks the question, when, O God? And if you look at verse 2, what's the answer there? What's the answer?
Well, it's when I've planned. Right? Yeah. It's the time that I planned that I'll take care of all of this.
Yeah.
Against the wicked.
Yeah. And
I highlighted verse 3 because I felt like And it was different in the ESV versus the New Living. But when the earth quakes and its people live in turmoil, I'm the one who keeps its foundations firm.
Yeah.
I thought, boy, if there's not a better statement of this is what I do, folks. This is, I'm the one who will decide when. And he tells Job that, right? Were you there when all
Yeah.
this was created? Were you there when I made this? No, I was.
Yeah.
I am. What's God's name? I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think that's tough. That's tough for us because we want things to be better now. We want things to be addressed now. And God's like, I have my own timetable.
Yeah. And even okay, well, he said, well, not now. If someone loses a loved one, right? There's the theories in mourning that let people mourn. But that doesn't mean 3 days. Doesn't mean 5 days.
Yeah.
Doesn't mean 5 months. It's as much time as you need. And God is saying, so we want fixes really quick. If not immediately, then if it's been 2 years, then something's definitely wrong with that person.
Yeah.
Right. Because they've not come out of this yet.
Yeah.
Well, we lost my nephew. I think it's been 13 years ago now. And it's still every year in the spring when it comes to those days when he was in his crash and when he finally died. Those are really hard times for our family.
Yeah.
There is no easy quick fix for those things. And there's no quick answer. And so all of these evil people have destroyed the temple. There's no quick fix to that.
Right.
We've been isolated. There's no quick fix to that.
One of the things that I'm realizing, or I guess I've realized, is when something goes wrong, I have a tendency to try to rush to fix it, to make it right.
Is that a man thing?
I don't know. I have no idea because that's all I got, Ask your wife.
Put a pause on this and go down and ask your wife.
Yeah. Well, we want things to be resolved. I think that's it. We want resolution. We want some sort of resolution. When things are, in discord and disharmony, we're wanting some sort of resolution. But what I've realized is sometimes taking a step back and waiting and watching and praying, all of a sudden things start changing and transforming. And it might not end up how I thought it would or how I thought it ought to be, but the resolution does come. And again, that's that new orientation. You go through that disorientation, then you come to that new orientation that things aren't like what they used to be, but sometimes, well, and I don't even like to say it's better or worse. It's just different.
No, right. Yeah. And it goes back a couple Psalms ago about changing your focus.
Yeah.
I think time does not heal all wounds.
Right.
But it refocuses us on the current, right? When grandchildren are born, your focus is different. When your job changes, your focus is different. It's not necessarily better or worse. It's just different. And focusing on the new thing, you can take some time off of looking at the old thing.
Yeah. Yeah, and the same verse that you're talking about talks about when people live in turmoil. And I don't know, have you ever known a time when people have lived in turmoil?
No, I'm waiting for it to happen because it mentions a lot in the Psalms, so it must happen to people, maybe countries, maybe yeah. I mean, it's just a weird time.
It is.
It really doesn't matter what your political bent is, whether you're right, you're left, you're center. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what your religious affiliation is.
Yeah, and I assume you're talking about especially the pandemic, because
I'm talking about everything.
So, as we go from the turmoil to verse 4, it kind of shifts a little bit. And so, Curt, do you think this is still God speaking, or do you think someone else has taken over this part?
I think it is God. I think it's still God. It's a pickup from, because, right, I mean, if you look at verse 2, that's where the quote starts. At the time I was planned. There is no end quote in verse 3, and then there's a new quote that starts in verse 4. So literally, that would be, I mean, literarily, that would be a continuation of the discussion that God has started. Right?
Yeah, but I don't see an end quote anywhere. Oh, there it is.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, there it is.
Do.
Yeah, yeah, there it is.
So if it's still God talking, I mean, he's the one who's telling them, you know, don't raise, and in ESV, it's don't raise your horn.
Yeah.
I looked that up, and that's like a symbol of power.
Yeah.
The horn. So if you're reading with a version that uses horn or fist, I mean, the idea is that we're in charge here.
Yeah, and that's an interesting thing with translations. You know, we've talked about translations from time to time, and if you're in the ESV and you come across "don't raise your horn," how much meaning does that really have? Like, none.
Well, I've watched enough movies to know, you know, when they blow the horn and
yeah,
kind of a thing. It's a symbol of
or is it a horn on like an animal head?
Well, it used to be.
Yeah, well, that's true. That's true.
Or saying you never blew it right, so they took it from it.
Yeah, yeah.
But don't raise it in defiance at the heavens. I mean,
right.
That's the big.
Right.
That's the big issue there. Don't do that. I warned you. Do not do that.
And this goes back to the previous Psalm, 74. It actually goes back to the Psalm before that, where he is wondering, you know, why are the wicked prospering, these who insult God?
Yeah.
And so here it's saying, you know, in due time, you know, in due time. And it's like, I warned you, stop your boasting. I told the wicked, don't raise your fists. Don't lift yourself up.
Right.
It is God alone who judges. He decides who will rise and who will fall.
Right there, right? I mean, that's where you go, okay, well,
yeah,
I don't have any right.
Yeah.
You know, which if you think about it in Psalm 74, where Asaph is saying, you know, when are you going to take these guys out? Right? God, you're bigger than this.
Yeah.
We talked about that a lot.
Yeah.
God, you're bigger than this. You go, wait a minute. You don't get to judge. I'm the one who gets to declare my own power and my own judgment on those. Was it 73 then, where he's saying, you know, these fat cats, they have everything. You know, so this is kind of a resolution to what he's been saying from the very beginning, which is really kind of cool if you think about how these fit together. It
is, and I think sometimes we miss that when we're just reading. You know, we're reading for information. We see everything in its own little box, you know, its own little container. But here, these are really. It's almost like a conversation between the different Psalms.
Yeah.
Well, you're talking about the fat cats, how they're doing so well. Well, look at this. These guys came in and destroyed all of our places of worship.
Beautiful.
That place.
I mean, that part's not beautiful, but I mean the way that they tie in together.
Yeah, and you had said in the show on Psalm 73 about that sanctuary being a moment or a place within us where we connect with God, and then you know, it's destroyed in 74, and here in 75 it's like, you know, let's not forget that it's God who judges. In fact, he holds a cup in his hand that's full of foaming wine mixed with spices. This is not a good cup.
Did you find anything about that? I tried to research that because that was a really weird image for me. I didn't understand it.
Well, it's a biblical image. You know, sometimes there's the cup of salvation. You have in the New Testament where James and John come and ask Jesus, or their mom, we're, you know, different gospels say it a little differently, but ask for the right and left places in Jesus' kingdom. And he says, are you able to drink this cup? And that's always confused me, because it's like, what's he talking about, this cup? We know from the context what he's talking about. Well, this is where some of the imagery comes from. It was, you know, this cup of judgment, this cup of, you know, what, salvation, that would be a good thing. This is not a good thing. It's a cup of judgment. And I believe it's even comes in Revelation at the end, you know, this cup of judgment that's being poured out. I mean, think about that, being poured out. And not only does he pour it out, the wicked must drink the judgment. It's not
to the very bottom.
Yeah, it's not. It's not. There's just not going to be in the judgment. The judgment's going to be in them as well. And so answering Psalm 74, it's like, there is justice, and there will be justice.
Yeah.
It's just the fact that I'm not the one who's in charge of that, and I'm not the one who sets the timetable on that. And so the end is, but as for me, I'm going to, and I didn't think about this week, Curt, but as we're going through it now, but as for me, I'm taking myself out of that judgment game.
Wow.
I'm going to proclaim what God has done.
Yeah.
I will sing praises to the God of Jacob, for God says, I will break the strength of the wicked. It hasn't happened yet, but it will. And I will increase the power of the godly.
Yeah. And that is nice, because he ends by saying verse 9, and then because God has the final word.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. This is what I promised to do, God. The rest, going back, God, you're bigger than this. Yeah, in fact, you are.
Yeah.
And thank you for that promise. You're the one who's going to take care of this.
And what would life be like if we step back from that judgment and allowed God to be God and trusted God in the judgment, because the judgment will be just. And instead of me, crying out, God, why haven't you taken care of this or that or the other thing? I just step back, and instead I proclaim what he has done, singing praises to him, waiting faithfully and trusting that he is just and he will take care of it.
And that's probably the key word, right? I mean, it really boils down to our trust that God does know what's happening. I mean, maybe that is reveals our level of lack of trust when we feel we have to take it into our own hands.
Yeah. Well, perhaps so.
We're the ones who have to fix this, because God's not. And that ended up becoming Saul's downfall. It ended up really every historical figure throughout the Bible that really screwed up. I mean, even Moses, the reason he couldn't enter the land, because God said, touch the rock, and he hit it with the stick instead. Yep. Oh yeah, well, I'll show you. And that's the downfall when we take things into our own hands.
Yeah. And but I think it's important as we head in this side to there's always balance. And we're also called to speak for those who are oppressed, the orphans, the widows. I mean, that's scripture, the poor, those with no voice for them. So this isn't hey, great, I don't have to worry about any of this. No, it's about allowing God to use us in that what do I want to say? In his.
Yeah, in the midst of the brokenness, we still represent God's grace and mercy and strength.
Yeah.
It's just that we don't have to take that mantle of judgment.
Yeah.
We can carry the authority of God. We don't have to be the judge of God.
Yeah.
Judge for God of the people who we think, because we never know the true nature of a man's heart.
Right.
We never know the true purpose that God has called a person to. And so by assuming that we can judge if they're wicked or good, if they're good or evil, and therefore we should act, that's God's job.
Right.
All we can do is defend the needy, which this is the first passage, and since we've started this, that doesn't bring up the needy and the poor, but that's been the theme. We got to stand up to these folks. we've got to care for people who are poor and needy. And again, let's just restate, that doesn't mean financially struggling. That's a state of your spirit, a state of the condition of your heart. Jesus, the Beatitudes.
Right.
You know, it's really a condition of a person's life, not just their checkbook.
Right. Right. But yeah, but, you know, as we were going down there, you know, going through this, it's like, well, you know, God calls us to work on the side of justice for the oppressed and stuff. And just some of the stuff the problem with, you know, doing this in 15, 20 minutes is you can't say everything.
We could. We just have to talk faster.
That's true. Speed it up. But I think the reality is that, you know, he's crying out to God, and God is letting him know, you know, there will be justice. There is justice. And he calls us to be part of that work towards justice. So it might roll like a river, you know.
So I think it's probably a good reminder, going back to verse 3. This week, again, we don't know what this week's going to bring. Who knows what will happen? You know, there's a full moon tonight while we're recording this, and then it's supposed to be we have murder hornets, we have earthquakes, we have, you know, everything.
We have turmoil.
We have lots of turmoil. The earth is quaking, but God is the one who keeps those foundations firm.
Yeah.
So that's a great promise to hold on to as you go by your week. As you go into the next, we're reading 76 next week. So as you start reading 76, maybe write down verse 3 from 75, post that on your bathroom mirror.
Or what about verse 1? We thank you, O God. We give you thanks because you are near. People everywhere tell of your wonderful deeds.
Yeah, it's just too long. Asaph got wordy.
How about this? We give thanks because you are near.
There you go. Perfectly stated. We give thanks because you are near. That's a great way to go into your week, folks.
It is.
As you read the new psalm, keep that old one in your head. We give thanks because you are near.
And if you are working for justice and you are fighting for the oppressed and you are getting weary because it seems like God is silent, let this psalm be an encouragement, because
excellent.
Yes, he in due time, at the time he has planned, there will be justice against the wicked. And so at this point, it's his grace that is holding back that cup to give them a chance to find a different way. And so maybe our work is to try to convince folks to find a new path, because he is near.
There you go. Well, that is excellent. We are at our time, and I sure appreciate everybody joining in and getting little notes from folks through the week that are reading this, and that they enjoy it, and that they're following along with us. That's exciting. Feel free to leave comments. Feel free to like us. Feel free to share it. Go to YouTube. Hashtag Pondering Psalms. I don't think we have a hashtag yet, but Pondering Psalms, and like us, follow us on YouTube. We're hoping to get up to 100 folks there, and join us then next week with Psalm 76. We're also Asaph.
We're hoping to get 100 subscribers on YouTube. I think we're up to 9. So,
and 7 of those are me. So we really need somebody to step in. I don't think he's not a subscriber yet. So
I subscribed. I'm one.
Okay, so we've got one person. That's exciting. That's so exciting.
Yeah.
But that's it. That's it for this week. Have a great week. Enjoy 76. It's only 12 verses, so you can read that every day with time to think about it then.
Yeah.
We'll meet you right back here a week from today.
All right. It's like, no, I wasn't an ambassador to Russia. Can you hear that?
Uh-huh. It's like rain. If we both do it, we could create rain.
I don't have keys.